Famous last words, we will stay the course until the job is done. The last time interest rates were this high, the U.S. economy plunged into the Great Recession and millions of Americans lost their jobs. But the Federal Reserve is not going to stop here. In fact, Fed Chair Jerome Powell is telling us that more rate increases are on the way and that officials at the Fed are determined to stay the course until the job is done. If the job, quote unquote, is to destroy the U.S. economy, they have already made a tremendous amount of progress towards that goal. The housing market is completely and utterly imploding, and economic activity is steadily slowing down all around us. But even though Powell can see the damage that is happening, he insists that the Federal Reserve will keep raising rates until the official rate of inflation returns to 2%. But this is not the early 1980s. Today there are a whole host of factors that are working in unison to push prices up, so the Fed can try to hammer demand as much as it wants, but getting inflation back under control is not going to be as easy as it was during the Volcker era. And dramatically hiking interest rates at the beginning of a major economic downturn is literally suicidal. Many of us have been pleading with the Fed to stop raising rates so rapidly, but we witnessed yet another 75 basis points rate hike on Wednesday. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday approved a fourth consecutive three-quarter point interest rate increase and signaled a potential change in how it will approach monetary policy to bring down inflation. In a well-telegraphed move that markets had been expecting for weeks, the central bank raised its short-term borrowing rate by 0.75 percentage point to a target range of 3.75 to 4%, the highest level since January of 2008. According to Fox Business, it was an unanimous vote, and this marks the sixth consecutive rate increase this year alone. The three-quarter percentage point hikes in June, July, September, and November underscore just how serious Fed officials are about tackling the inflation crisis after a string of alarming economic reports. Policymakers voted unanimously to approve the latest supersized hike. The widely expected move puts the key benchmark federal funds rate at a range of 3.75% to 4%, the highest since before the 2008 financial crisis, from near zero in March. It marks the sixth consecutive rate increase this year and puts interest rates in firmly restrictive territory. What we are watching is economic malpractice. I don't know how else to describe this. Sadly, the Fed is telling us that ongoing increases will be needed until the overall rate of inflation is brought back down to 2%. The committee anticipates that ongoing increases in the target range will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time, the Fed said in a new sentence dated to its post-meeting statement, added to the post-meeting. So more rate hikes are on the way. The good news, if you want to call it that, is that Powell told the media that future rate increase may be smaller in size. Quote, I've said in the last two press conferences that at some point it will become appropriate to slow the pace of increases, end quote, Chairman Jerome Powell told reporters during a press conference in Washington. He said, so that time is coming, and it may come as soon as the next meeting or the one after that. No decision has been made, he said. But of course, rates are now clearly high enough to crash the economy. The housing market is already coming apart at the seams, and we just keep getting data point after data point telling us that the economy is really slowing down. There's no way in the world that the Fed should be raising rates, but Powell insists that the Fed will stay the course until the job is done. My colleagues and I, he said, are strongly committed to bring inflation down to our 2% goal. We will stay the course until the job is done. I truly believe that those words will come back to haunt him. Look, I can understand why the Fed is so spooked about inflation. We have not seen anything like this in decades, and one recent survey discovered that 50% of Americans are feeling their health suffer as a result of the cost of living crisis. Research at Toluna, a consumer insights firm, found that 50% of those surveyed were feeling their health suffer as a result of the cost of living crisis, with inflation currently running above 8%. according to the Consumer Price Index. Among them, 37% said they were feeling more stressed, 21% they were eating less healthily, 16% said they were smoking more, and 13% were boozing more often. And we have just learned that approximately 29 million US households have been unable to pay their energy bills in the past year due to rapidly rising energy costs. Some 29 million households have been unable to pay their energy bills this past year, according to a survey that says the cold winter weather and rising utility costs will only worsen the crisis. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows that many more American families, 43 million households, have cut back spending on groceries, medicines, and doctor's visits so they could settle an energy bill. So I definitely agree that inflation is a major problem, but killing the economy is not the answer. If you doubt the severity of the crisis that we are heading into, just take a look at what is happening at Wells Fargo right now. Mortgage volumes at Wells Fargo slowed further in recent weeks, leaving some workers idle and sparking concerns the lender will need to cut more employees as the U.S. housing slump deepens. The bank had about 18,000 loans in its retail origination pipeline in the early weeks of the fourth quarter, according to people with knowledge of the company's figures. That's down as much as 90% from a year earlier, when the COVID pandemic-fueled housing boom was in full swing, said the people who declined to be identified, speaking about internal matters. If Wells Fargo is already facing a 90% decline, what will happen as the Fed hikes rates even higher? Sadly, the housing recession that we're now experiencing could quickly become a housing depression. In my brand new book entitled End Times, I explain that the U.S. economy has been going through a housing market crash every 14 years. There was a crash in 1980, there was a crash in 1994, there was a crash in 2008, and now a new crash has begun in 2022. But if the Federal Reserve was not being so foolish, we could have likely avoided a severe crash this time around. Unfortunately, our leaders have never seemed to learn from history, and the months ahead promise to be exceedingly painful. This was from Michael Schneider. He says, "My name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters. When you purchase any of these books, you can help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way you can really help, is by sending digital copies as gifts through Amazon to family and friends. The time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished by dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media on Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times, and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is by Michael Schneider on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.